The whole year has been building towards this race. The first year of the T100 series is coming to a close and just the grand final remains. There is so much to play for and every athlete on the start line will be racing for something, whether it's for the series win or moving into the top 20 of the standings to bank that prize money. That will make for exhilarating racing where athletes put it all on the line, and we've seen in short course the chaos that can ensue at a grand final, and I can't wait to see how it impacts the race dynamics in Dubai. Over the 6 races so far in the series, athletes are competing to earn points with their best 3 results counting so far, and they'll add on the score from the grand final. This has Taylor Knibb leading the way after 3 wins, Ashley Gentle in second and India Lee in third. There are then 8 athletes within 11 points of each other who could all climb onto the series podium or top 5. Remember, the grand final is worth 55 points versus the normal 35 we've seen in other races, which makes it super important for the end of season standings, and it will determine who gets paid what at the end of the year. The winner of the series comes away with a huge $210,000, and then you can see the prize money drops off by position, and then after 5th, the increments become less dramatic. So the athletes at the top are fighting for the big prizes, but there are also opportunities for athletes currently ranked outside the top 20 to move up and make at least $15,000 from the series, which could be huge. In this video, I'm going to break down 4 storylines I'll be following on race day, and each storyline is focused on a different group of athletes. Whether it's the athletes looking to win the overall series, athletes looking to climb the rankings and make it onto the series podium, athletes on the outside of the top 10 who need to move up to guarantee their contract for 2025. And then there are some athletes who are outside of the top 20. If they have a good race, they could move up and earn some of that guaranteed series prize money. The way this race plays out, you'll need to be following everyone in the field because there'll be stories everywhere. Let's dive in. Kicking it off with the athletes in the hunt for the series title. And if we look at the standings, really it's between Taylor Knibb and Ashley Gentle, given the points advantage they've earned throughout the season, while India Lee has more of an outside chance. After India Lee, the rest of the field are likely too far behind to challenge for the series title, but we could see them contend for the series podium. So we'll start with Taylor Knibb, and you'd think coming into the series with a perfect score, winning all 3 races, the grand final would be a simple task and it would be easy to take the title. But it's not that easy. The way the points are structured, with those extra points in the grand final, Ashley Gentle could still give her a run for her money. Now, to demonstrate how the different scenarios could play out, I've put together this table for each athlete, which shows for each position their competitor finishes, what position they would need to finish to stay ahead of them. Now, I could have just chosen one scenario for each athlete, but I wanted to provide you as much detail as possible because I found it fascinating looking at these for each athlete and seeing where they need to finish to stay ahead of all the different athletes. So feel free to pause the video as we go through. So just explaining how this table works, this table is for Taylor Knibb. Her competitor's finishing position is across the top row, and then we can see the required finishing position for Knibb in the row of the athlete we're comparing her against. So for Knibb versus Gentle, you can see if Gentle finishes in second, Knibb would need to finish in 4th to stay ahead of her, while if Gentle finishes in 5th, Knibb would only need to finish 9th. Similarly, if India Lee wins, Knibb would need to finish 6th to remain ahead of her. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how these tables work, and like I said, I just wanted to provide you with as much detail as possible that you can look at even when the race is going on. So wrapping up on Taylor Knibb, she needs a top 2 finish to guarantee the series title. She's the only athlete that has her fate in her hands, and she's the big favourite coming into the grand final, obviously undefeated so far this year in the T100 series, but she'll be tested in the heat of Dubai. We've seen her struggle in the heat before, and Ashley Gentle always outperforms everyone else in the heat, so it's by no means done, and those are the big 2 to watch. And coming to Ashley Gentle, and looking at her table, you can see she needs to win and hope Knibb finishes 3rd or lower. Now, the way Knibb's raced this year, it's hard to manage her not winning, let alone not finishing in the top 2, but like I've said, the heat will be the big factor. Then if India Lee wins, for Ashley Gentle, she would just need to make the podium and hope Nib has a really bad day to take the series title. Finally, I've included India Lee, but she's probably a bit on the outskirts of the series title. She missed that opportunity in Vegas to close the gaps really to Gentle, but also to Nib, that would have reduced what she needed from this race. So looking at her table, she'd really need to win and hope Gentle finishes 4th or lower and Nib 8th or below. Anything is possible, especially in a grand final. We've seen some crazy results before, but it would be a big upset. So really the main battle out front is between Nib and Gentle. Now coming to the athletes that are fighting for the series podium, we've got 9 of them who are in contention. It's mathematically possible for Nib not to finish on the podium, but she'd effectively either have to not finish or finish in the bottom 2 or 3, and some other athletes have some really good results. So for this purpose, I'm going to assume that she's going to make the podium, and therefore I'm just going to focus on the athletes down to Flora Duffy. Taylor Spivey is probably just a bit too far down to be in contention for the series podium. The really exciting thing of how the standings have worked out is, firstly, there are so many athletes still fighting for the top spots in the final race of the series. That goes from 4th to 8th. There are only 6 points in it, and that's only a 2-place difference in finishing position if you're finishing in the top 9. So for those 5 athletes, their main objective should be finishing ahead of others in that group, and they will likely climb the rankings. We've already touched on Ashley Gentle. She's one of the contenders to win the overall series. She's in the most comfortable position out of this group, and she can guarantee her spot on the series podium with a top 5 finish in Dubai. Meanwhile, only a win would guarantee India Lee a series podium finish. Gentle has a 16-point buffer to Imogen Simmons, while Lee's buffer is only 8. So the Lee-Simmons battle will be one to keep an eye on through the race, because they could be the one competing for that 3rd spot on the series podium. Now looking at Imogen Simmons in a bit more detail, if she wants to jump onto the podium, these are the finishing positions she would need depending on where India Lee finishes, and also for Gentle, who's a little bit further out of reach. If India Lee's in the top 5, Imogen Simmons would need to be 2 places ahead of her. So you can see if Lee finishes 5th, Simmons would need to be 3rd. If she finishes 4th, Simmons would need to be 2nd. This could lead to some fascinating race tactics. We've seen them come out of the water together, and they are 2 of the stronger cyclists in the field. I've been calling for it all year that I'd love to see them push the pace in the swim and get on the bike together and work together, but we could see an absolute battle between them in Dubai. India Lee may have the slight edge on the run, but we've seen them outrun each other before, so it just depends who's performing on the day. For Laura Philipp and Kat Matthews, I'll consider them together. They're only a few points apart, and we've seen them have some absolute battles already this year. Kat Matthews getting the better of Laura in San Francisco and London, but Laura taking the crown in Nice. In terms of the battle between the 2 of them, it's pretty much winner takes all from this race if they both finish in the top 10. If they want to finish on the podium, then they'll need to beat each other and both Lee and Simmons, unless Gentle has a really bad day. Their tables are very similar, but I'll start with Laura Philipp. If she finishes on the podium and Lee finishes 6th or lower and Simmons 4th or lower, then she can leapfrog both of them. So she needs to be targeting that podium and hoping the other 2 can't follow her. And then for Kat Matthews, she's in a marginally worse position where a podium would need Lee to be 7th or lower and Simmons 5th or lower. Now for both of them, that's assuming they finish 3rd, so just on the podium. If they finish higher than that, then the other 2 could finish lower, and you can see how that plays out in the tables for both of them. Next, we've got Lucy Byram and Paula Finley, who are tied on 60 points, so their tables will look the same. And this is another battle to keep an eye on. So far, we've got Nib versus Gentle, Simmons versus Lee, Matthews versus Philipp. Now, really, the battles could be anyone in this section of the standings. However, like I've already said, Simmons and Lee are pretty evenly matched across each discipline. Matthews and Philipp have already had numerous battles this year, and we've seen Byram and Finley battle and work together on the bike. Looking at the table, they need the same outcome as I mentioned for Matthews if they want to jump onto the series podium. If Byram and Finley finish on the podium, they would need to finish ahead of Philipp and Matthews, and Lee would need to finish 7th or lower, and Simmons 5th or lower. So you can see the further down the standings we get, the more that is required for each of the athletes if they want to get onto the series podium. Now, the last two athletes in this group are Julie Deron and Flora Duffy. Now, they're only 1 point apart from each other, so their tables look very similar. For Julie Deron, let's assume she finishes second like she has in her 2 T100 races previously. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of scenarios that could play out, which is why I've put the tables on screen if you want to pause it and take a look. To finish on the series podium, if she finishes second, she would need to finish ahead of Finley and Byram, have Philip and Matthews 4th or lower, Simmons 5th or lower, and Lee 7th or lower, which is definitely a possible outcome if you think about it. And it'd be pretty incredible if she can make the overall series podium off one less race than everyone else. It just shows the caliber of athlete that she's even in consideration for that. Meanwhile, for Flora Duffy, the table looks similar, but she'd need to finish 2 places ahead of all of Philip, Matthews, Byram, and Finley. You can see if one of those athletes finishes 4th, Duffy needs to finish 2nd, and if one of them finishes 5th, she needs to finish 3rd, and so on. Then you can see if Duffy finishes on the series podium, she'd need Simmons 6th or lower and Lee 9th or lower. Again, all possible, but she'd need to also get the better of Julie Deron, which she hasn't done yet. One of the big things I'm excited to follow on race day is the battle for a guaranteed contract in 2025. I've been thinking about this storyline all year and I'm so excited to see how it plays out. Athletes can guarantee an invite to the series next season by finishing in the top 10 of the series standings. So athletes outside of the top 10 will be looking to move up because they can earn that guaranteed invite and the contract money that comes with it, providing them security for all of next season. With Charles Barkley out, Flora Duffy just needs to finish to make it into the top 10, but she'll have to keep an eye on the athletes coming from behind. It's worth saying some athletes will be selected for contracts next year based on their PTO ranking. So although Lucy Charles Barkley will fall out of the top 10 of the series standings, it's likely because of the results she's had this year that she will be invited to a contract next year because of her PTO ranking. So looking at the athletes that will be looking to make it into the top 10 in Dubai, with Pallant Brown, Watkinson and Chura not racing, and Kaidi Kivioya is probably too far down, I've got 3 athletes to keep an eye on. Taylor Spivey, Tamara Jewett and Annie Haug. Let's run through what they would need to do on race day to guarantee themselves a contract for next year. For Taylor Spivey, firstly, she would need to stay ahead of the other 2 athletes and pick off just one of the athletes who's in front of her. This excludes Lucy Charles Barkley. Spivey just needs 11 points to overtake her, which equates to a top 13 finish. Duffy and Deron are clearly the easiest to catch in terms of the deficit to make up, but they are both also coming off podiums in Vegas. Spivey's best result so far was that race in Vegas where she finished 5th. If she matches that 5th place finish in Dubai, then she'd either need Julie Deron or Flora Duffy to finish 9th or below, which is definitely possible but might be asking a bit. She would likely need a new best result to get ahead of any of the other athletes, unless they're having a completely off day. It could be a bit of a tough ask, and she's coming off that crash from the Tri Grand Final, so may not be 100%. We'll have to wait and see. For Tamara Jewett to guarantee that 2025 contract, she'd need to beat Taylor Spivey and not get overtaken by Annie Haug, and she'd need to leapfrog another of the athletes ahead of her. She needs a top 11 finish to overtake Charles Barkley, but she'll need much higher than that to catch anyone else ahead of her. Her best result this year has been 6th, so she'd need to beat Spivey and hope Duffy or Deron finish outside the top 10. Definitely possible, but she'll need some luck. As with Spivey, if she has a new best result, then the math becomes a bit easier. Now, this could be the big curveball and is definitely one of the main storylines you should be following on race day. And if I'm Flora Duffy, who's effectively moved into the top 10, considering Lucy Charles Barkley isn't racing, this is the athlete I am most worried about on race day, and that is Annie Haug. She's the only one of the 3 athletes who are outside the top 10 that are looking to move up and guarantee a contract for next year that I could see podiuming or even winning the race. She was off in London but showed some signs of life in Vegas with 6th, but that wouldn't be enough in Dubai as she sits 18 points behind Flora Duffy. If she podiums, then I think she has a chance of earning a contract. She would likely get one through her ranking anyway, but T100 may be not willing to offer her one the way she's treated the series this year. So if she can guarantee one, then it's great for her. So if Haug finishes on the podium, then she'd need one of the following: Duffy to be 8th or lower, Derren to be 9th or lower, or Finley or Byram 10th or lower. Again, all possible, but she needs to be in contention for the podium to catapult herself up the standings. The final storyline I'll be following are the group of athletes who are ranked outside the top 20 who are looking to move up and earn some of that series prize money. From 17th to 20th, you can earn $15,000, and then the further you move up, the more you can make. Kate Curran and Laura Madsen are both wildcards, so won't have made any money from the series outside of the prize money from the races, while Chelsea Sodaro and Marjolaine Pierre, who are also ranked outside the top 20, are both contracted athletes, so they'll have essentially had that salary as well as any prize money from racing. So because of this, I'm just going to focus on Kate Curran and Laura Madsen, as earning that series prize money could be even more important to them. So looking at Laura Madsen, she's 22nd in the standings, but is also on the same amount of points as Els Visser, who's in 20th, and she's not racing. Therefore, just finishing, which would earn her 4 points if she came last, would move her up the standings. So looking further up than the $15,000 you get for finishing in the bottom 4 spots, I think if she overtakes Amelia Watkinson, she could finish 16th overall. That would need a top 11 result to tie level with her, or a top 10 to move ahead of her, which would earn her $18,000. And if she can finish in the top 9, then she can overtake Watkinson and Pallant Brown, which would earn her $20,000. Not bad for a wild card. Then for Kate Curran, she's a bit further down the rankings, currently in 27th on 17 points. As Laura Madsen is likely to move up, that would make Anne Reichman the next athlete to overtake on 26 points. A 15th place would match that position, and 14th or above would move Curran ahead and earn her that $15,000. However, that assumes that no one comes from behind her and overtakes her. Athletes like Marjolaine Pierre and Chelsea Sodaro, who are both on the start list at the moment, if they have a good race, they could overtake her because they're only a few points behind. So looking a bit further up, the next athlete who isn't racing is Hayley Chura, 19 points ahead. That would require a top 8 finish, which would be an amazing result for Curran. And it's going to be a bit of a nervous watch for Hayley Chura. She's currently in the position where she's earning that series prize money. She's not able to race in Dubai after she picked up an injury in Vegas. So she'll be watching the race, seeing if she gets that money or not, which will be another story to keep an eye on. An athlete who is racing and who's currently in the money is Kylie Kivyoya. Curran is 12 points behind, so would need a really good result, and for Kivyoya to have a bad day to overtake her in the rankings and jump into the money. Lots to keep an eye on, and I can't wait to watch this race and follow all these stories. This is what the whole series has been building towards: the battles at the grand final to determine who wins the first ever T100 series, who can get onto the series podium, who will guarantee themselves a contract for 2025, and who can get some of that precious series prize money. There's so much to follow, and I cannot wait to see how it all plays out in Dubai. It's going to be awesome. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you go and subscribe. It really makes a difference. There'll be a similar video on the men's coming out, and I'll be putting out a few more videos over the rest of the year covering the big races. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.